So last night we went over the very first of the trials, of the Gentile trials. Then we also talked about Judas.
Right.
So tonight we're going to be pivoting back a little bit more to these Gentile trials. So if you remember where we've been, Jesus has already been tried by the Sanhedrin. Was it a fair trial? No.
And you were amazing at calling that
yes.
out. The stuff you remembered blew my mind.
They broke every law in this. They sent him, first it was at Annas' place, and then it was at Caiaphas' place, and then they took him to the Grand Hall and tried him there. And it was a farce. It was not legitimate. But they're like, okay, we got him on blasphemy. They didn't. Now we're going to take him in front of the Romans because they can't execute him.
The Jews.
The Jews can't, yeah.
The Romans are the only ones who have the power of
The Jews did not have
punishment.
the ability to, well, the legal right to. They would have happily done it. So they need to take him now in front of Pilate and Herod. And we've talked about this broadly several times, so I want to give you the idea of where this goes. First, he's going to go to Pilate, who's going to say, not guilty. Going to send him over to Herod. He's going to go in front of Herod. Herod's going to say, not guilty. Send him back to Pilate again, who's like, still not guilty. And then Pilate is going to give them an option. And I think this is what's interesting. These aren't just opinions. Like, they're like, this guy doesn't seem guilty to me. These are actually judicial rulings.
Yes.
So
important.
Yeah, these are official proceedings that are happening here in these Gentile courts with Pilate and Herod, who just so happened to be in the area at this time because it was the Passover and because they were afraid they were going to have a little insurrection on their hands. So
yes.
They are very conveniently located right now for Jesus to be sent to them. So you want to start, how do you want to start this?
Oh, let's see. Maybe we should read a couple verses
We can do that. Let's start in chapter 23.
Yeah, let's do that.
So this is what chapter 23 said. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. That assembly was the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, effectively. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "It is as you say," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted. "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean.
I think maybe we should stop right there, sweetie. Do you mind if I stop you?
Okay.
I thought you were going to, and then you kind of took me by surprise when you.
I was going to go all the way through.
Oh,
I like the Galilean part. No, go ahead. Let's
Okay.
stop.
I just don't want to bite off too more than we can chew. All right.
We
So,
already did
so between verse 1 and verse 5, I want to hear from you. What are the made up charges, in your own words, that the Jews are trying to convince Pilate of that Jesus has done? Because remember, so go ahead and comment while I'm talking here. If they bring Pilate the charge of blasphemy, which for them is a death penalty, Pilate is going to say, "What on earth are you doing wasting my time? Get out."
Care.
I don't care what he said. I don't care if he thinks he's God. I don't care if you think you're God. Get out. He doesn't care because it carries no weight in the Roman judicial system. So in order for them to get Pilate to act, and to act in a way of executing him, Jesus, they have to somehow make Pilate believe that Jesus has done something worthy of capital punishment. So Cindy is pointing out, well, they say he called himself God. He said, "Are you the Son of God?" And he was like, "You said it."
Dottie says that
would
he's
be Jewish.
in danger to Roman rule. Shireen says that they're saying he opposes paying taxes.
Okay, good.
Carolyn, he opposes paying taxes to Caesar.
Good.
Really interesting accusations there, isn't it?
Yes. Anything
Of all
else?
the things.
There we go.
Emily causing civil unrest. Stop collecting taxes, threats to the Romans. Lauren says no respect for the government. I think that's a big one.
I like how you put that, Lauren. Because
That's sort of like the umbrella of all the other things that they're accusing him of.
Trying to get him to believe. Now, and Shirley says unrest. Now, here's what's so utterly insane here. Pilate knows the Jews hate Rome. They despise Rome. They despise paying taxes. If Jesus actually hated Rome, told them not to pay their taxes, and proclaimed himself a king to overthrow Rome, Pilate knows full well that these guys would jump on that bandwagon with all the instruments and play their way right down the road with them because they would love that. So it is a complete made-up farce.
And he knows it.
And he knows it. And I honestly think they know he knows it too. And everybody realizes that this is ridiculous. And yet we're going to proceed here. So in order to really give you a super intricate sense of why things go the way they do, because if just hit the like button if you can agree with me. Have you ever read these things or heard them in a sermon or something and you've just thought, how did this happen? Like, how does Jesus get convicted here? I don't understand why it went that. I mean, outside of like, it was obviously God's sovereign will for it to happen, but humanly speaking, how did this ever occur? It's just such an injustice, such a miscarriage of justice. Lauren said, thank you, Lauren. Jesus actually said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. He had said the opposite of what they were accusing him of. He said, pay your taxes. So we know, okay, so I'm getting some likes here. So thank you. All right, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to unravel the mystery behind this historically. And when we're done, you will understand exactly how this all came about, and it will make 100% sense to you, maybe for the first time ever. So let me give you some background on Pilate, and we'll see how we got from point A to point B. First of all, Pilate, remember, had been appointed by Rome to rule over the southern area of Israel, and he was appointed about 26 AD. He ruled until 36 AD, FYI, when he was exiled, and then nobody ever heard of him again. They think he committed suicide, but nobody really knows because he just disappeared. So who knows what happened to him. So we think he got into this position of power possibly by marrying the right person who kind of had like her family was kind of powerful, because he was not a good ruler.
No.
So
it wasn't on merit.
No, exactly. So he had, of course, strict orders that he was representing Caesar, Tiberius Caesar. That was who he was working for. He was under strict orders. You keep peace. It's Rome. Hello, we keep the peace in Rome. Pax Romana, duh. So don't let anything happen. Well, he did a horrible job at this, just absolutely horrible. So one of the very first things that he decided to do in 26 AD when he ascended to his position of power was he decided he was going to establish his authority. And his predecessors had really done a very nice job at not deliberately riling up the Jews. So they didn't put Caesar's images on things. They didn't mint coins. Like even Herod, that cut off the head of John the Baptist, he didn't want to really rile up the Jews either. And so when he minted coins, he didn't put Caesar's image on them. The Jews, after they had come back from the Babylonian captivity way back about 500 years before this, there was one good thing that came out of that. It cured them of idolatry.
They were very sensitive to idols.
Oh, never, ever again. And so, yeah, what you just said is absolutely correct. They did not like graven images. In fact, we just don't find much in the way of even archaeological artwork. And, like the Egyptians always have scratchings in the rocks, and you can tell what they look like. The Jews didn't do that because that would be a graven image to them. So we really don't have much of a sense of exactly what they would have looked like back there outside of general history, just interestingly enough. So anyway, Pilate is 26 AD. He's just gotten his orders. He's excited. He decides, I'm going to ride into Jerusalem with my soldiers, and I'm going to let these Jews know that I'm in charge. There's a new commander, and I'm the one, and we're going to just make sure that they know it's me. So he rides in with his soldiers, and they have banners on poles as they're riding their horses with their banners. On top of the pole is a golden eagle. Not great, but it's what's on top of the golden eagle that just
I love that they
fuss.
put something on top of the eagle.
Yeah.
It's like a weird design.
Not totally sure why, but on top of the golden eagle was a bust of Caesar. Well, what do you think the Jews did with that?
They were not
Here
thrilled.
they come riding into Jerusalem with, yes, a new sheriff in town. Thank you, Emily. I was trying to think of that, and I was like, I can't think of the word. It was sheriff. I couldn't pull it out of my mind. There's a new sheriff in town. That's exactly what Pilate wanted to say. Thank you. So anyway, they come riding in. They have Caesar's bust on top of the poles, and the Jewish people lose it because here come idols. Remember, Caesar was worshipped by the Romans as a deity. He was considered a god. So the Jews knew this. And this was way more than they could possibly bear. So they demanded that he take those banners with those poles down. And Pilate said, no. And they said, you better take it down. He said, absolutely not. So he goes back to Caesarea where he actually lives. And a group of about 1,000 Jews decide they're going to follow him back there. It's about 75 miles. It would take you an hour and a half to drive it. It's not close. They get this entourage of about 1,000 men. They go to Caesarea where his palace is, and they start harassing him. Take those down, because they've left them up there. Take them down, take them down, take them down. And he's like, no, I won't. And he just holds up in his palace and he waits. And he thinks, if I wait long enough, they'll go away. He totally underestimated.
Very persistent bunch.
They had chutzpah. So they continue to harass and plead and say horrible things about him and hurl insults at him.
They just badgered the guy.
This is all historical. You can look it up. 5 days into this, Pilate has had it. He can't do it anymore. So he sends message to them. Meet me in the amphitheater and I will give you a hearing. So they're like, yay, he's going to give us a hearing. Off to the amphitheater they go. Pilate, in the meantime, gathers his army, and they're all armed, of course, and they surround the Jews in this amphitheater. So now they are caught in there. And Pilate stands up and says, I'm not taking those things down. And the Jews are like, oh, yes, you are. And they go through this argument back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Pilate cannot believe it. Why is this such a big deal? Just back off. It's not a big deal. But I'm in charge. You're not. So finally, he says to them, all right, listen, I'm not doing that. And if you stand here and you keep asking, I will have all these guards around you kill you off with your heads. And the Jews, to his surprise, went, do it. And Pilate sat back.
He was like, uh-oh. Didn't see that one coming.
He's like, oh, crud.
It was a bluff.
Oh, crud. I can't kill those people. They're all unarmed. He goes, he's thinking, if I do that, I mean, Caesar will kill me. It'll get back to Judea. They'll riot. It'll be mayhem. They called his bluff. And so he backed off.
He took him down.
Oh, boy. So at this point, the scoreboard is Jews 1, Pilate 0.
And he's just set precedent for how the rest of his reign is going to go.
Exactly. Oh, and man, I'll tell you what. He was mad. He was furious because he was so humiliated. You can imagine. I mean, that looked really bad for him. So, not long after that, Pilate decides, in the spirit of Rome and building, because they were truly tremendous builders. If you know anything about ancient Rome, I mean, unbelievable feats of architecture, the roads that they made. It was amazing. So if you were a Roman ruler, you had to plot your ground and you had to build something. So he decided, you know what, Jerusalem just doesn't have adequate water supplies. And it was true. They really didn't. It was all mainly cisterns. So he goes, I know what I'll do. I'll build an aqueduct and I'll bring water from about 12 miles away through the aqueduct. We'll fill up the cisterns. We'll be able to use it in the temple. We'll be able to use it for washing and for, cooking. It'll be fabulous. And it should have been. And typically rulers would be lauded and it was such a feat and everybody was thrilled. And they would have been thrilled with the water, except for one little tiny detail. Noelle, what did he do?
He took the money from the temple treasury. He stole the money from God.
How do you think that went over with the
Didn't
Jews,
go real well.
who already now feel a bit empowered and also hate his guts? They lost it. They absolutely lost it. So they demanded that he give the money back. And of course, he's not going to do that.
But he also hasn't learned anything from last time, so.
No, not really. So now about like tens of thousands, according to historians in that day, tens of thousands of Jews gather in front of him, and they are protesting that he stole their money out of the temple. That was God's money he took. And so while, this is amazing, guys, while there are peaceful protesters, riots break out with not peaceful protesters in the same vicinity. So now he's got like a whole bunch of people that are just trying to be peaceful and say, please don't do this. Then he's got just riots going on here in front of him. Yeah, I mean, it sounds so much like I'm talking about, last weekend and continuing on through this week. It's amazing how human nature really never does change. And so he's like, what do I do? What do I do? This is a mess. Caesar's going to be so mad. I'm supposed to keep the peace. I'm not giving the money back because I want to build this thing. So he says, aha, I know what I'll do. He gets his soldiers and he has them dressed like plainclothes citizens so that they can just kind of intermix with the Jews.
You know where this is going.
And then he had told them, when I give you the sign, and I don't know what the sign was. Maybe it was, I don't know. You're to take out your clubs. So it would be like having baseball bats, if you can think about that, and take care of the rioters. The problem was that they were overachievers, those soldiers, and rather than only taking care of the problem people,
Yikes.
not that that was even okay, but instead of doing what they were told, they just lost their minds.
Indiscriminately beat everybody to a pulp.
Exactly.
As people were running away from the city, they were chasing them down. People died from being trampled. It was just awful.
It was absolutely
It was so beyond
horrendous.
Anything that should have happened here.
The optics were bad. And of course, Caesar finds out, and he is not happy. Strike two. Pilate is in big trouble. He's not deposed yet, but he is on crackling thin ice at this point. So, in that regard, now it's Jews 2, even though they've lost some people, but as far as the power goes, Jews 2, Pilate 0. And Emily says, very hard to hear. It is hard. I mean, you kind of think of it and then go, I don't even want to think about what that was like. It was just so awful. Well, you'd think he would have learned his lesson.
But this guy is not the brightest and the best of rulers.
No, he's not. So there's a palace right there in Jerusalem that, not Tiberius, I'm sorry. I'm getting all mixed up. Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas's dad, Herod the Great, had built this palace in Jerusalem, long ago, before Jesus was born. So it was kind of like the palace where dignitaries would stay when they were in town. So if Herod was in town, he would often stay there. Pilate was in town. Sometimes Pilate would stay in this place, and other dignitaries and things like that. Well, the Jews thought it was their palace because it was on their land, so they sort of laid claim to it as well. Well, Pilate decides, since he stays there sometimes, he wants to redecorate. And he has these great shields that have an inscription on them that says, Tiberius Caesar. Oh. And he hangs them on the walls of this Jewish palace. And the Jews lose it. Absolutely lose their mind. And now they're not just mad at Pilate, they're also mad at Herod. You remember at the beginning, if you weren't with us, I said Herod tried really hard not to incite the Jews. He didn't even mint coins with images because he knew the Jews would freak out. So he was nuts. He was nutballs, Herod, and horrible and evil. But to his credit, he did just sort of want to keep everything sort of status quo with the Jews.
Yep.
So now he's got these stupid shields hanging up in the palace his dad made that he stays at, and the Jews are mad at him. And so Herod is now furious with Pilate because Pilate has caused this huge uprising again. And so Herod sends word by messenger to Caesar and says, you got to do something about this guy. He's awful. And this is what he did. And so Caesar goes, I can't believe it. How many times do we have to go through this? So he sends the messenger back to Pilate and he says, message from Caesar, get those off the wall and take them to a pagan temple in Caesarea and put them up there. Put them up anywhere you want there, but not here. What are you doing? Oh, man,
and
Pilate.
as Judy says, strike 3.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, how many strikes do you get? Typically 3 is it. So now Pilate, this brings us to Luke chapter 23. This has been the history with Pilate. He knows if there is one more Jewish uprising, if he makes one more mistake, he's out. He's gone. He may be killed. He may be exiled. He doesn't know.
Who knows? It's bad.
Whatever's going to happen, it's going to be horrible for him. Right now, his main job, it's Passover. No problems in the Passover. That's why
the peace.
He's there. That's why he has his army there. That's why Herod is there. Everybody keep it tamped down. Keep it peaceful. Keep it happy. And let's just see if we can get through this and get me back to Caesarea, not in trouble again. Now, do you understand why we are about to read that this man is going to repeatedly beg the Jews not to execute this man because he's innocent? Jesus we're speaking of here. And why the Jews are like, we're going to insist. Pilate, hope we don't have a riot. That would be bad, wouldn't it? You better do what we say. Does that kind of
They've
come
got
clear?
all the leverage.
He has nothing.
And they know it.
He has nothing. So, back to the first 5 verses. Let's just take a look at those again. Actually, let's look at verse 4. Verse 3. And Pilate asked him, Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus just said, you've said so. You said it, basically. But, and then he said to the chief priests and the crowds, I find no guilt in this man. That's a judicial ruling. Like in court, it's like the judge saying, not guilty, and putting the gavel down. But they were urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee, even to this place. And that stirring up the people has this idea of like false teaching and taking everything and turning it on its head and just making everything horrible. So I would actually love, if you don't mind, to hop on over to John chapter 18 for a minute, because John gives us so much more information. Luke is giving us a very short synopsis, but John gives us a lot more. So let me get over there myself. That's John chapter 18, and I would love to do verses 28 to 32.
Yep.
Noelle's commenting that for you if you're...
I'll go ahead and read it now too. So John chapter 18, verse 28. Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover. Just incredible. So Pilate came out to them and asked, what charges are you bringing against this man? If he were not a criminal, they replied, we would not have handed him over to you. Pilate said, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. But we have no right to execute anyone, the Jews objected. This happened so that the words Jesus had spoken, indicating the kind of death he was going to die, would be fulfilled.
So we get just a little bit more information here as to what's going on. First of all, I love in verse 29 of John chapter 18, when he says, they bring him before and he goes, okay, what's the charge? Give me a charge here. I don't know what we're doing. And their answer is unbelievable. They say, if this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. Almost like saying, and you can hear the contempt in their voice, you don't even have the right to ask us. Yeah, we don't owe you, Pilate, an explanation. You have to do what we say, and we want him dead. So we have our reasons. They're not really pertinent to you. Can you hear this? This is unreal. Had it not been for Pilate's 3 utter fiascos, this whole thing would have gone down totally different. And in fact, I would submit to you, it had to happen this way because Jesus had to be killed as an innocent man, and had those things not happened, there's no way Pilate would have just gone ahead and executed him. I really don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's astute.
The providence of God here. So Pilate then goes back on them here in John, and he says, tell you what, again, he's trying to keep the peace. I don't know what you're doing, and I don't understand any of this, but I will relax the rules for a moment. So he's all yours. You want to go kill him? Have at it. Have a good time. I'll let you do it this once. Do you see the fingerprints of Satan in this? What is Satan trying to do? I want to hear from you, so go ahead and comment.
What's the strategic move here for Satan?
There is something very important that Satan is trying to accomplish, and we can see it. Him grasping at straws, Satan grasping at straws here, attempting to make sure that things go the way he needs them to go. What is Satan doing and using Pilate to try to accomplish? We will wait for your answers. We have a long delay tonight.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
I wish that we did it, but we do. It's okay. Yeah. So dead time's no good. Maybe nobody wants to answer. Anybody want to answer?
What's the strategy?
Okay, what's the strategy? What's the strategy? I know as soon as I say something. All right, thank you, Carolyn. To have Jesus die another way. Carolyn, Debbie says, keep him off the cross. Exactly. And Mary says, he does not want Jesus to be crucified. What does Lauren say?
She says, if the responsibility is on them, the Jews, instead of Pilate, maybe they'll change their minds. Dottie, he doesn't want Jesus to be crucified. Kimberly, to have the Jews stone him instead of crucify.
Thank you, Kim, for pointing out the method by which the Jews killed people was stoning. They would cast them down. Jesus had been prophesied numerous times to have been needed to be lifted up in death, not cast down.
No bones broken. That's a big one.
That's right. A crucifixion, unless they came and they broke your legs to kill you, which they didn't have to do because Jesus was already dead. No bones of his were broken. A stoning would crush your skeleton completely. All your bones would be broken. Shirley says not to crucify Jesus. So you're right. So you can see Satan getting in the mix here, going, okay, if I can just get Pilate, maybe I can influence Pilate somehow to hand Jesus back over to the Jews. They've always wanted to kill him. I mean, I think in Satan's mind, this is a slam dunk. They've been wanting to kill him for years. This is their opportunity, and they get to do it themselves. They will jump at the opportunity to kill Jesus. And the Jews look back at Pilate and they go, oh, that's against the law.
We can't, sorry, you have to.
It's going to be on you. See, they didn't want actually to do it. So my question to you is, the Jews had blank check. Take your would-be Messiah, in their eyes, and do whatever you want. I'll close my eyes. I won't tell Rome. You take him out. Have a wonderful time. I'm going to give you the leeway to do that. And the Jews say, no, you do it. Why did they do that? Because like we just said, they've been looking for an opportunity. I mean, we've read this multiple times. They were looking for an opportunity to kill Jesus. Over and over, it's why Jesus had to be in the temple in the crowds. It's why he was hiding out on the Mount of Olives at night so that they couldn't find him. I mean, he was in danger for quite some time.
And now all of a sudden they're not willing to pull the trigger
Yeah,
themselves.
now they have the jurisdiction to do it.
Strange.
And they have no plan on killing him. So why do you think that is? What made them change their minds on this? What's the plan here? Okay.
Emily says they don't want blood on their own hands. Yeah.
Okay.
Mary didn't want to take responsibility. Bob, because the Jews didn't want the blame. Or Jesus' blood on their hands.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if you've ever had something that you really, really, really wanted, like not somebody dead, but just something that you wanted, and you dreamed about it, and you thought about it, and you talked about it, and you researched it, and you saved up for it, and then all of a sudden, like, the opportunity came to actually do this really big thing or make this really big purchase, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, whoa, it's real now. What are the implications? What are the ramifications for me? Dottie says, afraid Jesus might be who he said he was.
Oh, I think that's very insightful.
I like that. Yeah. What if we're wrong? They're thinking. What if he actually is God? What if we try to kill him and he kills us? Like,
That would
what
be
if this is
problematic.
a setup? I mean, they don't know how this thing ends yet. They don't know. Other
Yeah.
people do.
Honestly, if you're asking yourself questions like that, you should probably walk away, but
Yeah,
They don't.
absolutely. Deb says, can walk the walk, but not talk the talk.
that's so funny.
Yes, absolutely. So now all of a sudden the ball's in their court and they're having cold feet, right? Maybe it's not such a good idea. We don't really want the Jew, because remember, this has all happened in the nighttime. Like, people are still just getting up.
It's
They're-
early morning.
They don't know what's going on, and they don't want a riot either. The people being mad at them. And then what if he is God,
They
or
need
what
to
if he
maintain
kills
their
us?
status.
They're like, yeah, it's a little bit of a risky proposition. You do it, Pilate. We don't want to do it. You do it.
And we know we can manipulate you into doing things, so here we go.
Yes. And then verse 32, I love that John adds this in his gospel. It says, this was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. In other words, what John is saying is, here's what all the human elements did, but they only did that because that was God's sovereign will anyway. Because Jesus had to die the way he died. So they played into God's plan. Did they have full responsibility? Yes. Did they have full ability to make all their own decisions? Yes. Free will.
Once again, we juxtapose the free will of man against the sovereignty of God, and it just blows our little minds.
Exactly. Let's just do a little bit more in John, and then we're going to head right back over to Luke, because again, John just gives us so much more detail. And then when we go back to Luke, Luke's going to truncate it, but you're going to know exactly what actually happened. So, Noelle, could you read verses 33 to 38?
Yeah. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now, my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You are right in saying I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." "What is the truth?" Pilate asked. With this he went out again to the Jews and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him." But
We'll stop right there. Okay, so here's what happens here. Pilate goes into Jesus and he asks him point blank. See, of all the charges that they made, there's only one that really concerns Pilate. Like, he knows the whole tax thing is a farce, and he knows he's not causing people to riot. But this whole thing about a king,
kind of concerning.
a little bit. So he goes, I'll question him on that. So he goes, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus, I love Jesus's answer. He basically says, are you asking yourself, or are you asking like what they say about me, the Jews? Because the answer would be different. Basically, if you're asking Pilate if I'm a king, no, because I'm not here to rule the Romans. But if the Jews are saying it and you're asking me about theirs, absolutely I am a king, but I'm not a king over this earthly stuff right now. I don't care about your stupid politics. I am king of another world, like the universe. And so Pilate's like, yeah, see, that just doesn't bother me. That's fine. If you want to be king of another world, I don't care. And I'm sure Pilate in his mind is like, this guy's weird. I mean, he's just bizarre. I've never heard anybody like this before. I don't understand like, if you're going to be king of another universe, why don't you just go be that one? You know, I don't know what's the problem here. He's just got to be getting irritated. He's like, these Jews, they're always like a thorn in my flesh, and we can't get along, and now we've got this guy, and what is this all about? So he goes, all right. Jesus ends up by saying, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate says to him, what is truth? What is truth? I mean, the questions just never really change, do they? I mean, it's still something that we hash out today. Well, that I love it when people say, that's your truth. Like, oh, I hope it's the truth. I don't really have my own corner on the market of truth. If it's true, it is. And if it's not, it's not. It doesn't matter what I believe. If it's true, I can't affect that by my belief system. You know, either it is or it's not. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, then Pilate, after he says this, goes back outside to the Jews. And again, the gavel goes down again. Bam. He's not guilty. He pronounces him not guilty. He's like, guys, there's just nothing here. There is no reason to do this. So let's go back over now to Luke chapter 23. And this is where in verse 3, where Luke is going to truncate it when he says, Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus says, yep, you said so. Then Pilate says to the chief priests and the crowds, I find no guilt in this man. But they were urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee, even to this place. And
he's like, did you say Galilee?
He's like a little groundhog, Pilate is. Galilee? Did you say Galilee? Why is that such a groundhog moment for him?
A groundhog moment.
You know, or prairie dog, that's what it is. Oh, boy, I can't get anything right tonight.
Oh, it's okay. We're not talking about animals anyway. No, so it's interesting that they mention Galilee, Pilate thinks to himself, because I happen to have the guy who is in charge of Galilee here right now, who I hate.
But let me ask you, who are we talking about? Who would be the ruler in charge of Galilee that Pilate hates, that Pilate thinks, oh,
I can just pawn this off on him, make it his problem.
I don't want to deal with this. I keep trying to give it back. They won't take it. But plan B for me.
He's like, this is a clever moment. Who's he handing it off to? Mary says Herod.
Mary
getting
knew you would get it right.
Yep, Herod from Judy. Yep. Yeah, he hands it off to Herod, right, who is the ruler of Galilee. He's like, hey, it's one of your guys.
Because remember, Jesus had been born and raised in the northern part, and he had spent most of his ministry up in the northern part. So Pilate is like, this is fantastic. It's his jurisdiction. It's not even my jurisdiction, and he's here. So all I have to do is send him across the way, and he knows Herod is ruthless. I mean, he's the one who beheaded John the Baptist, and he's the same guy that in the book of Acts beheads James the apostle, one of Jesus' 12. He's the first apostle to be martyred. It says he killed him with the sword. That almost always means they cut their heads off.
It's awful. But he was very sword happy.
Oh yeah.
He was down for killing people.
100%. He didn't mind at all. And once again, not to keep beating a dead horse, but we see Satan again. Like, okay, so the Jews wouldn't do it. But if we can get him to Herod, Satan knows Herod is mean, he's evil.
And he has a preferred method of killing that completely goes against all the prophecies.
Absolutely. Dottie makes a great point. She said, it's so sad to think about Jesus being dragged from court to court. Dottie, thank you for bringing that out, because in the details, I almost let that just slide right by. This is heartbreaking stuff. Jesus didn't deserve any of this. And he keeps getting, Luke again, he's giving us a truncated account, but he's getting beat and his beard is being ripped off or out, and they're spitting on him and they're mocking him, and all these things are happening, and he's just taking it. as Satan is just actively, chaotically trying to do something. I mean, maybe Satan is like, if we can beat him enough, maybe he won't make it to the cross. You know, maybe we can take him out before then. Or we can get Herod to do it, or we can get the Jews to do it, or somebody. Just don't let him go to that cross and defeat me on the cross. So, what time is it? 9:41. So let's do verses 6 to 12.
Let's do it. So on hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he heard that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he'd been wanting to see him. From what he'd heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Remember how we talked about the Sadducees and the Pharisees and how they hated each other, but they were able to come together over this issue? Interesting. Herod and Pilate hated each other. They were able to become friends over this issue. They were able to come together on this. I mean, it's really interesting because Jesus is simultaneously a divisive force and very unifying in that people will unify against him far more often and far more effectively in many ways than they will unify for anything else.
Isn't that sad?
I think that continues to this day.
Wow. I want to talk about how when Herod was super excited to see Jesus, basically he wanted a magic show. He'd heard about Jesus, he knew he did miracles, he'd never seen one done himself, and he was like, oh, pop some popcorn and bring them in and let's have a magic show. Yay. And Jesus didn't do anything. But beyond that, what else happened here, Noelle, that made Herod so furious?
Jesus won't even speak to him. Jesus won't say a word. He's asking him many questions, and Jesus just stands there stoically. The amount of disrespect that Herod felt was enormous. It's insane.
Yeah.
You know, you don't treat a ruler like that, except Jesus is the king of everything. He doesn't have to treat anybody any such way.
Yeah. And I think too, these guys in their power, like Herod, they just were stunned. Like they know in human terms that they have the authority over this guy who they can execute if they feel like it. And he has the gall to stand there innocently and not respond. Why do you think Jesus wouldn't speak to Herod?
It's a good question.
Yeah. Emily is asking a great question. Go ahead.
She says, why did they dress him in an elegant robe? Why did they do that?
They were mocking him. Remember when they blindfolded him, when we talked about this last night, and then they would smash him across the face and say, okay, prophesy, since you know everything. Tell us who hit you. And they were being sarcastic and mocking. This is just a different form of the same game. They put a robe on him. Now, he has been beaten. We're not getting the full story in Luke, so I am leaving parts of it out. Otherwise, we'll be here for, till 2021 in the same section. But they have, at this point, they have beaten him. They have yanked out his beard. They have spit all over him. He's bloody. He's bruised. He's matted.
He's in horrific pain.
He doesn't look at all like what they're accusing him of. I mean, Herod has to be like, this, are you serious? This is the guy that you're so scared of? Where's his army? Where are his friends? He has no friends to defend him, and he looks like he's half dead already. So he won't say anything. He is no fun at all, so we'll have some fun with him. Go get my royal robe. Put it on this king. Oh, he thinks he's a king. The robe had to hurt.
It would have been so heavy,
Oh,
and he was so bruised.
And bleeding and cut up already, and they put this great big scratchy robe on his back to mock him and like make believe you're a king type of a deal. It was just horrible, horrible. mistreatment. Just terrible. Yeah. Oh, Deb says, I can be here till 2021 just to hear all this. Oh, you're so sweet. So I don't know. Nobody has kind of weighed in on our question of why Jesus refused to answer Herod. Maybe I should have said, I don't really have a hard and fast answer for that. It's more of opinion at that point. Yeah, Emily says it beats 2020. I hope so.
2020's been a rough one, guys.
I hope so. What did Roberta say? I missed her comment.
She said, I think Jesus felt Herod knew the answers already, and so Jesus did not answer him. I think that's actually very astute.
I do too.
Yeah, Jesus, here's the other thing. He's answered all the questions all night long in multiple trials. He's been before Pilate. There's nothing more to say. There's nothing more to answer.
Yeah.
What more? And Emily says, greatest form of disrespect, and I think that was a lot of it.
I do too.
I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Dottie says, I think he was done with his teaching. Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. He was done. He was like, you've heard everything you need to hear.
Margie. Yes. Margie says Isaiah 53, where it talks about the Messiah would be led to the slaughter like a lamb, silent before its shearers, not saying a word. He was fulfilling prophecy on top of that. Deb says you can't incriminate yourself if you don't speak.
That's a good point.
Which is true. Of course, and I know you know this, but this wasn't the Jewish court where it was illegal. Roman court, they didn't care. But you're right.
Yeah.
You can't if you don't speak. And Karen says, I think Jesus was so tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Becca says,
Becca said Jesus knew Herod's heart and his motives weren't pure. They weren't correct.
Not at all.
And I think you often see this. The way Jesus decides to respond to somebody is based on their heart condition, right? And so you'll see two people ask very similar questions and get totally different responses from him because one of them is coming from a place of sincerity and repentant heart, right? And the other is challenging and hardened and cold. He answers them very differently. And in this case, Jesus knows that Herod's just there to see a show. And I think he also knows that this isn't the moment. If he says something that really ticks off Herod's a brash, spur-of-the-moment kind of guy. He might cut his head off. Not a risk worth taking. Just keep quiet, keep him relatively placated, let him play his game, get sent back to Pilate.
Yeah.
I think you're all right.
I do
Those
too.
are all reasons.
And how sad is it that the Jews were right there hurling insults at him at the same time? Just awful. You know, they wouldn't go into Pilate's house, but they go into Herod's house.
Yeah.
They're just, again, when Satan's involved, look for chaos. Not just evil, although yes, but utter chaos. As opposed to when God does something, you see order. You see things that make sense in addition to just pure goodness. It's just such a stark contrast. There stands Jesus, silent, in control of the entire situation.
Even as he's standing there in absolutely horrific human agony and bleeding and his face falling apart and just a wreck, he's still 100% in charge and mentally there. Dottie says, do we know how many Christ followers there were at this time? I mean, 0 right now. You don't see a whole lot of people following him at this moment.
I'm trying to think. After the resurrection, was it 200?
Something like that.
I'm not
small.
Yeah, it was a couple hundred that were still around and believed that Jesus did show himself to. After the resurrection, by the way, he never showed himself to anyone who was not a believer in him.
Yeah, he doesn't go to the Pharisees and it's like, what's up, guys?
Nope. He will not show himself to the people who did not believe in him, only to the people who did, which I think is really interesting.
We'll talk about that more at that time.
Yes, we will. Yeah, great question. Well, we always like to end, as you know, by giving you an opportunity. If your heart has been touched tonight in a way it's never been touched before, and you want to embrace this Jesus that did all of this, and like I said, more that we haven't even covered, he did it all for you because somebody has to pay the price for sin. And either you can let Jesus have done it on the cross or you can do it for eternity in hell. And Jesus says, man, let me pay it for you. I did it. I did it for you. So we're going to give you an opportunity to pray and to cry out to him for salvation and to save you from your sins. Noelle, you always do such a wonderful job. Would you lead us in prayer for anyone who wants to join?
Yeah, if you haven't done this before, if this is truly where your heart is, you can just repeat these words, say your own words, and this is a turning point. Make sure that you know what you're saying, because this is a big decision. This is a really big deal. Yeah.
If you don't mean it, don't even bother, because the words aren't magical.
Yeah, it's worth nothing if it's not sincere, if it's not truly from your heart. So, Lord, I just cry out to you with my arms open, just wanting to receive your forgiveness. Lord, I'm, for the first time, just aware of what you did on the cross and why such a horrific death was necessary in order to pay the enormous price for my sin. And Jesus, I believe that you paid that in full when you died for me, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yes.
And I want to live my life for you because of that. Lord, would you give me clarity on the path that you have for my life? Would you give me the strength to follow you, and would you just continue to persuade me every day of who you are and what you did for me on the cross? Lord, I repent of all my sins, and I'm so grateful to you for covering me in your righteousness so that I can have a relationship with you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow we should be able to get through the actual crucifixion. So it's going to be a really heart-wrenching night, but it's going to be really, really good. So I hope you can join us tomorrow night, and then we'll take the weekend off like always, Saturday and Sunday, and be back with you Monday.
See you again on Monday. All right. We love you guys. You, as always, are smart and helpful and very, very insightful.
And so faithful.
Yeah,
Thank you for showing up.
Come.
You're amazing.
Oh my goodness. We appreciate you guys
We do.
so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday night. Go make good decisions and be a light in the world tomorrow. And we'll see you again tomorrow night.
Bye.
Bye.